Government is not reason. Government is not eloquence. Government is force. And like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Well, thank you for tuning in. My name is Daniel Hapney, and yes, this is The Real Story. Favorite things I like to, ask my audience, and that is, could you think for yourself? Can you follow the money? So what I have, usually on many shows, I put in a little 9/11 Zen, just so maybe you'd think for yourself. And you'd say, gee, there never was a trial and nobody really caught anybody, and all the little stories we were told didn't add up. But you're already mad, and I guess they've succeeded in doing what? In doing what Hitler did, and that was finding a way to hate the Jews. Well, they've now found a way to hate the Muslims. And I'm sure you're being distracted and stuff, and that's why they do it, by this new mosque in New York City thing. Just a distraction. And by the way, if you do live in the United States of America and you believe in this republic, then you should believe in what? The First Amendment, which if you read the 5 things in there, one of them is freedom of religion. But notice how they're getting you distracted. Tonight's show, what I want to cover for you, or at least what I want to try to cover, is to bring to your awareness what was going on right before 9/11. What were some of the conditions? What happened before 9/11 that once we were distracted, it wasn't really that important. But looking back in hindsight, looking back in time, we see, my gosh, that's so coincidental, it's almost conspiratorial. So, for you people who, by the way, think that never before in history has anyone conspired, maybe you want to read history. Or have someone, if you can't read history to you, okay? And I always recommend turning off the television. So, a couple things. This is, once again, the pre-9/11 show. Yeah, what happened before 9/11? Boy, because we always hear it's a post-9/11 world we live in. So here we have this for you. First off, isn't it interesting how they planned to attack Afghanistan before 9/11? It comes out that the plan of attack plans were already on the president's desk. Now, if you know anything about planning, let alone contingency planning or military operations planning, that takes weeks, months to do. You don't just do it overnight. It's not like, oh, last night I had to cram for a war, like you're in college and I never read it before, but I'll cram and figure out this war thing. So this is important because it's like, oh, there was like foreknowledge, there was foreplanning. So, don't believe me, I'd like you to do your own due diligence, but here, you can take a look at some of these. Here's the BBC, MSNBC, geez, you can even go with the CBS stuff. But what's important is, as you look at these pictures, keep showing the pictures as I talk, over in India, how the Indians were going to work with the Russians and the Americans on a plan of attack for Afghanistan before 9/11. And when you find out that they pre-positioned troops and they signed orders to move troops, so that we could have troops available for this. And you say to yourself, wow, I mean, I heard about the gas pipeline, and I heard about in Waco, Texas, the Taliban was here in 2000 and said no to a natural gas pipeline. But it's rather interesting. We know that the negotiator for UNICAL or whatever was Hamid Karzai, who's now the president of Afghanistan. But before 9/11, they already planned to attack Afghanistan. Maybe all they needed was an excuse. Sounds hard to believe, doesn't it? But don't believe me. Once again, I've shown you I'm not the one saying this. News people from around the globe, even your own news media, tells you that they plan to attack Afghanistan before 9/11. How advantageous now, wasn't it? Now, it's interesting, too, because also before 9/11, and here you get to see this is a picture, this is from CBS, but we found out that there were $2.3 trillion missing that the Pentagon couldn't account for. How do you lose $2.3 trillion? Well, we moved to zero, we lost it. And the reason that's interesting is because here's a video clip. Here's, I want to say, Byrd, okay, Senator Byrd or whatever, and he's quizzing and questioning Donald Rumsfeld.
I get tired of saying that defense is to be made an excuse for wasting dollars. I don't believe we should pay 1 cent for defense more than we have to.
I seriously question an increase in the Pentagon budget in the face of the department's recent Inspector General's report. How can we seriously consider a $50 billion increase in the defense budget when DOD's own auditors say the department cannot account for $2.3 trillion in transactions in 1 year alone.
It is, I was going to say terrifying. It is such a monumental task. I have met with two former officials of the Pentagon who served in the budget and controller and those areas. And I've mused over the fact that I've read some of these things and asked what they thought.
We process nearly 10 million paychecks a month. 10 million times to get things screwed up. I've had my pay screwed up 6 times since I've been in the department. And it's really bad when you screw up your boss's pay.
I doubt, to be honest, that people inside the department are going to be capable of sorting this out. I have a feeling it's going to take some folks from outside to come in and look at this and put in place a process that over a period, and I regret to say, but I've seen how long things take. I think it's going to take a period of years to sort it out, and I think it'll probably take the cooperation of the Congress to try to get the system so that you can actually manage the financial aspects of that institution rather than simply report on things that have happened imperfectly.
There's more oversight over the Head Start program than there is over the entire military budget.
It's a terrible record, and it's preposterous that the Defense Department doesn't know what's happened to this money.
This situation's a disgrace. It tells me that we can't meet our constitutional obligations to the taxpayers of our country to make sure that things are honestly and legally spent.
We're told major cuts in education programs, and then we read, well, you know, $500 million is paid per year that isn't owed.
It is an incredible thing that we arm the world and then turn around and come to Congress and say, look at all these weapons out there. They're almost superior to ours. They're comparable to ours. Well, of course they are. They're ours. We sold them to them.
Since the end of the Cold War, we've sold more military weapons than the rest of the world combined.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
So it wasn't me who said on September 10th that trillions were missing from the Pentagon. Now, one I thought was interesting, and I want you to take a look at this because it's not me saying it, of all the 5 sides of the Pentagon, isn't it interesting that when the plane impacted into the Pentagon, it didn't fly into Donald Rumsfeld's office? No. It happened to hit the side of the building that was under construction, didn't have many people, but who was working there? As you read it, isn't that interesting? Accountants and budgetary people. So money's missing from the Pentagon, and all of a sudden when it's attacked, who gets killed? But all the people looking for the missing money. Now I know you say, gee Dan, that's just coincidental. There's 5 sides to a Pentagon, so there's 4 chances they could have hit Donald Rumsfeld. Once again, if you're attacking the Pentagon, come on, are you buying this stuff? Also, too, I'd love you to look at the whole, but do your own due diligence. Why don't you take a look at the military's photos, the U.S. Army and stuff, of the Pentagon when it was hit, and tell me how you fit a 757 through the hole. Would you please? But we're still before 9/11 and the morning of 9/11. Isn't it funny that the senior Bush, that's right, the president's father, who used to direct the CIA, and remember, Osama bin Laden was with the Mujahideen when the Russians were Afghanistan, right? Put those together yet? And the CIA was funding them and giving them things like Stinger missiles, right? But Senior Bush was meeting with who? Well, first off, Bush is a partner in the Carlyle Group, an investor, yes. And who else is? Well, it just so happens Osama bin Laden's brother. So, what was Bush doing right before 9/11, before the attacks? He was in a meeting with Osama bin Laden's brother. Kind of interesting, huh? These things that happened before 9/11. Rather interesting. Maybe for you, the viewers, maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. Okay? But here's one I like to go with. And first, we'll take a look at the pictures because it's not me reporting it to you. I'm just letting you know that things happened before 9/11. And one of them was someone put all sorts of put options on only 2 airlines, okay, and a couple financial companies that just happened to be housed in the World Trade Center.